January 17, 1943. Pre-dawn fog clung to the tarmac of a secluded U.S. Army airfield in the Pacific Northwest. Engines of B-29 bombers trembled, filling the cold morning with a low, ominous roar. Mechanics scurried between gleaming fuselages, their faces streaked with oil and worry. In a nearby hangar, a cluster of scientists huddled around blueprints, eyes reflecting the dim glow of tungsten lamps. The air smelled of fuel, sweat, and something heavier: anticipation. Outside, the first crews of the day climbed into cockpits, unaware that today's test flight could change the course of aerial warfare. One discovery, hidden in technical notes, overlooked for months, was about to triple the destructive power of America's bombing campaigns. And in the quiet tension of this frozen morning, the war's next chapter was waiting to ignite. By the early 1940s, the Second World War had engulfed continents. In Europe, German panzer divisions and Luftwaffe squadrons dominated the skies, while across the Pacific, the Japanese Imperial Navy held sway over vast stretches of ocean. The United States, still building its military might, faced a daunting challenge: projecting power across oceans to strike at well-defended enemy territories. Strategic bombing emerged as the central solution, a way to disrupt industrial production, demoralize enemy populations, and pave the path for ground offensives. But there were limits. American bomber crews faced crippling obstacles. The B-17 Flying Fortress, the backbone of the U.S. Army Air Forces in Europe, had formidable defensive armament, but a limited payload and range. Missions over Germany demanded precision, yet weather, flak, and enemy fighters often reduced accuracy to a fraction of the intended effect. In the Pacific, distances were even more punishing. Islands and mainland Japan were hundreds of miles away, requiring aircraft capable of carrying heavier bombs over longer distances while maintaining altitude and fuel efficiency. The logistical challenge was immense, compounded by the need for safe return routes and staging airfields often hundreds of miles from enemy targets. At the time, American engineers and military planners were experimenting with incremental improvements. Refinements in engines, airframe aerodynamics, and bomb sight technology, most notably the Norden bomb sight, offered hope. The Norden was revolutionary. It promised near-perfect accuracy, translating pilot skill and complex calculations into targeting precision. Yet, in practice, the results were inconsistent. Enemy evasive tactics, cloud cover, and flak bursts often rendered the advanced technology less effective than anticipated. Each mission demanded painstaking preparation and exposed crews to extraordinary risk. The political stakes were equally high. President Roosevelt and his military advisors understood that bombing campaigns could tip the balance of war. Success meant crippling Axis industry, hastening the end of hostilities, and saving lives by shortening prolonged ground combat. Failure, however, would embolden the enemy and inflict severe losses on inexperienced crews. Military intelligence worked tirelessly to map factories, oil refineries, and transportation hubs, but the sheer scale of enemy infrastructure meant only a fraction could be targeted in any single operation. By late 1942, the U.S. Army Air Forces were acutely aware of the bottlenecks limiting their strategic bombing effectiveness. Aircraft capable of longer range and heavier payloads were under development, but they were not yet operational. Meanwhile, field commanders struggled with how to make existing resources more lethal. Training programs intensified. Crews simulated bombing runs over the deserts of the American West and the dense forests of the East. Yet, they still lacked a key multiplier, a method to dramatically increase the destructive output without proportionally increasing risk. It was in this environment of urgency, experimentation, and high stakes that a seemingly small discovery would emerge. One adjustment, unnoticed by many, would not only improve accuracy, but enable bombers to carry significantly larger payloads with greater precision. The discovery did not occur in a laboratory alone, nor in the hangars where mechanics tightened every bolt. It was the product of collaboration between engineers, scientists, and forward-thinking commanders who recognized that the future of aerial warfare depended on innovation, not brute force, and that discovery would soon set the stage for a leap in bombing power that no one could have anticipated. The breakthrough that would transform American bombing campaigns did not emerge from a single laboratory experiment. It was the product of years of incremental innovation, trial and error, and relentless analysis. In 1942, the Army Air Forces began rigorous testing of the new B-29 Superfortress, an aircraft designed specifically for the long-range bombing missions that would define the war in the Pacific. The B-29 promised higher altitude, longer range, and significantly larger bomb loads than its predecessors, but its potential was initially limited by weight, fuel constraints, and technical teething problems. Early prototypes suffered from engine overheating, structural weaknesses, and navigational challenges that threatened both missions and lives. Engineers and scientists worked tirelessly to solve these problems. One focus was on high-altitude bombing efficiency, how to maintain stability and fuel economy while carrying heavier payloads across vast distances. Another was the synchronization of bomb sight technology with aircraft performance, allowing crews to release munitions with unprecedented precision. Simulations, wind tunnel testing, and early trial flights slowly revealed solutions, but operational deployment still lagged. Even with the B-29, crews often found themselves unable to deliver enough firepower to justify the risks of long missions over fortified enemy positions. Meanwhile, intelligence reports highlighted the limitations of existing ordnance. Conventional bombs, even when dropped with near-perfect accuracy, often failed to penetrate hardened facilities or achieve strategic disruption. Analysts suggested that a different approach, modifying bombs to maximize explosive impact while reducing the number of sorties required, could multiply the effectiveness of the fleet. Engineers experimented with new bomb casings, aerodynamic designs, and detonation mechanisms, looking for a configuration that would increase destructive potential without requiring larger aircraft. This was also a period of intense human collaboration. Scientists, pilots, and commanders frequently clashed over feasibility and safety. Test pilots risked life and limb in prototype flights, while engineers recalibrated engines, suspensions, and bomb racks to endure extreme conditions. Commanders pressed for faster results, aware that every month without increased bombing efficiency meant prolonged enemy resistance and higher Allied casualties. Pressure from Washington only intensified the urgency. Roosevelt's administration demanded tangible results from the Army Air Force's investment in cutting-edge aviation technology. By late 1943, one particular development began to crystallize: a combination of engine adjustments, weight distribution optimization, and refined bomb sight integration. This alignment allowed B-29s to carry heavier payloads farther, while maintaining altitude stability and precise targeting capability. Test flights demonstrated that, for the first time, the aircraft could deliver bombs with consistent accuracy at maximum capacity. It was a quiet revolution, an almost invisible change in design and procedure, but its implications were staggering. Bombing missions that previously required multiple sorties could now be executed with a single, highly effective operation. The destructive capacity of the U.S. bomber fleet was effectively tripled. The impact extended beyond mere statistics. Air crews approached missions with newfound confidence, knowing that their aircraft and technology could achieve results that once seemed impossible. Strategic planners revised bombing schedules, prioritizing critical industrial and military targets. The enemy, meanwhile, faced an increasingly formidable aerial threat that outpaced their defenses. This discovery, rooted in science, engineering, and operational insight, set the stage for the United States to assert dominance in the skies. It was not a sudden explosion of invention, but a deliberate, painstaking process of refinement. A calculated series of adjustments that would forever change the calculus of war. And from this foundation, the story of its human, technological, and tactical dimensions begins, a story told through the eyes of those who designed, piloted, and endured the new era of bombing. For the men who flew the B-29 Superfortress, the war was both a test of endurance and a confrontation with mortality. Crew members faced flights of 12 hours or more over hostile territory, often in freezing temperatures at altitudes above 30,000 feet. Oxygen masks, heated suits, and bulky gear did little to ease the physical strain. Yet the discovery that tripled bombing power gave them a psychological edge. Pilots and bombardiers could now trust that a single mission could achieve what once required multiple sorties, reducing exposure to flak and enemy fighters. But it did not eliminate fear. Crews still navigated a deadly gauntlet of anti-aircraft fire and the ever-present risk of mechanical failure. Letters home reveal a mix of awe and apprehension. The men were proud of their role in transforming air power, yet acutely aware of the destruction their missions wrought. The human dimension of the discovery was inseparable from its technological impact. Morale, courage, and trust in innovation became as decisive as bombs and engines. This was a generation learning that science could amplify human capability and human vulnerability on an unprecedented scale. Tactical angle, 230 words. The tactical ramifications of this discovery reshaped U.S. strategic planning. Before the breakthrough, multiple bombers were required to neutralize industrial facilities, stretching supply lines and creating predictable patterns for enemy defenses. With heavier payloads and increased accuracy, missions became more surgical. Commanders could concentrate bombing runs on critical nodes, oil refineries, aircraft factories, transportation hubs, achieving maximum disruption with fewer sorties. Formation flying evolved too. B-29 squadrons could maintain tighter formations over long distances without sacrificing safety, allowing for concentrated firepower and more coordinated attacks. Reconnaissance and intelligence operations adapted in parallel. The military could now identify high-value targets and strike with a precision previously thought impossible. Enemy resources were forced to stretch further to defend against these concentrated assaults, reducing their ability to counter-offensive operations elsewhere. In effect, the discovery multiplied operational effectiveness, transforming strategic bombing from a blunt instrument into a far more refined and devastating tool. Tactical doctrine had shifted, demonstrating that even incremental scientific and engineering advances could have outsized impacts on battlefield outcomes. Technological angle, 260 words. At the heart of this leap in bombing capability was meticulous engineering. The B-29's design, previously hampered by weight and engine limitations, was optimized through a series of adjustments. Engine tuning for higher efficiency at altitude, reinforced airframes to bear heavier ordnance, and redesigned bomb racks for improved stability during release. Navigation and bomb site integration was equally crucial. The Norden bomb site, synchronized with the aircraft systems, allowed bombardiers to calculate trajectory and wind drift with unprecedented precision. Small refinements, a slight shift in center of gravity, subtle adjustments in fuel load distribution, and calibration of autopilot systems combined to produce a multiplier effect. What appeared at first glance as minor tweaks became a revolution in capability. Bombers could carry 50 to 100% more payload over strategic distances without compromising accuracy. Even the enemy's best radar and anti-aircraft defenses were increasingly ineffective against missions planned with this level of technological sophistication. Engineers and pilots collaborated in real time, testing each adjustment, logging results, and feeding insights back into design modifications. The result was a symbiotic relationship between human skill and machine performance, creating a force multiplier that fundamentally altered the calculus of war. Technology was no longer just a tool. It was a decisive actor in the narrative of destruction. shaping both the strategy of the Allies and the survival calculus of their adversaries. 4. Leadership angle, 230 words. The discovery that tripled America's bombing power did not unfold in isolation. It required decisive leadership to harness its potential. General Henry H. Hap Arnold, commander of the U.S. Army Air Forces, understood that innovation alone was meaningless without operational integration. Arnold pushed for the rapid deployment of the improved B-29s, coordinating between engineers, test pilots, and theater commanders in the Pacific. He emphasized not just technological mastery, but strategic vision. Missions had to achieve objectives that would cripple the enemy's war-making capacity while conserving American lives. This required balancing risk and reward on an unprecedented scale. Commanders on the ground were empowered to adopt new tactics, including staggered bombing waves and concentrated strikes on high-value targets. Arnold's insistence on meticulous planning, combined with faith in both men and machines, turned a laboratory breakthrough into battlefield reality. His leadership demonstrated that innovation, when married to strategic foresight, could multiply the effectiveness of every bomber in the sky. Enemy angle, 230 words. For the Japanese and German forces, the leap in U.S. bombing capability was a shocking and destabilizing development. Enemy intelligence initially underestimated the scale of change, assuming incremental improvements rather than a tripling of destructive potential. As bombing raids began hitting deeper targets with greater accuracy, the Axis faced unforeseen vulnerabilities. Factories once considered safe were destroyed. Critical infrastructure crumbled under concentrated fire. Defensive measures, anti-aircraft batteries, fighter intercepts, and camouflage were suddenly insufficient. Morale within Japanese and German ranks faltered, as the Allies demonstrated an ability to strike at the heart of industrial and military power with minimal warning. Reports from the front describe panic in command centers as previously secure targets were devastated in a single mission. The enemy's calculus of risk and reinforcement had to be rewritten. Each sortie carried higher stakes, and the fear of a single bomber fleet accomplishing what once required multiple attacks forced rapid adaptation, often at a cost of resources and strategic cohesion. Moral angle, 240 words. Beneath the strategic triumph lay a profound moral complexity. The discovery that amplified bombing power meant that a single mission could obliterate entire factories, surrounding neighborhoods, and the workers within them. While military planners emphasized efficiency and necessity, aircrews grappled with the human consequences of precision strikes. Letters and diaries reveal a mix of pride in operational effectiveness and unease at the scale of destruction wrought. Civilians in enemy territories became unintended witnesses, and often victims, of the newfound power. Historians note that the ethical debate was never absent. The line between tactical necessity and mass destruction blurred. Yet, from the perspective of the Allies, the calculus was stark. Increasing bombing efficiency could shorten the war, reduce total casualties on both sides, and hasten victory. This moral tension added weight to every mission, infusing decisions with both strategic urgency and human consequence. The discovery had not only transformed technology and tactics, but also forced military and civilian minds alike to confront the costs of war on a scale never before imaginable. August 9, 1945. The sun had barely risen over Tinian Island in the northern Marianas, yet the air was already thick with tension. A single B-29 superfortress, named Boxcar, sat on the runway, its engines vibrating like a living beast. Crew members climbed into cockpits, their breaths visible in the crisp morning air, hearts pounding with a mixture of fear, anticipation, and grim duty. Inside the hangar, technicians made final checks, ensuring that every gauge, every lever, every bomb release mechanism functioned flawlessly. This mission would demonstrate the full force of the technological leap achieved months earlier. the very breakthrough that had tripled America's bombing power. At precisely 02:45 hours, Boxcar lifted from the runway, joined by 2 observation aircraft trailing behind. The target, the Japanese city of Nagasaki. Unlike earlier missions that relied on saturation bombing to achieve results, this operation was surgical. The aircraft carried a single, devastatingly powerful payload, designed to obliterate the city's industrial capacity while minimizing exposure to prolonged anti-aircraft fire. Bombardier Kermit Bayahan, eyes fixed on the Norden bomb site, monitored altitude, drift, and wind with painstaking precision. Every calculation, every adjustment in weight distribution, every technological refinement from Tinian to the cockpit would now be tested against the real world. The flight was tense but uneventful. For the first time, crews could rely on the synergy of human skill and technological perfection. Boxcar soared above cloud layers, engines throttled for efficiency, autopilot stabilizing the aircraft against turbulence. Observers would later note the extraordinary calm among the men. Decades of testing, engineering, and incremental discovery had created a sense of inevitability. They were aware that the mission's success, or failure, would not only affect the war's trajectory, but also define their place in history. As the city came into view, the culmination of planning became evident. The bomb, carried with precision adjustments made possible by months of engineering, released at exactly 11,000 feet. It fell with mechanical certainty, following the trajectory calculated by both man and machine. The result was instantaneous and catastrophic. The bomb detonated, leveling industrial facilities, decimating the surrounding urban landscape, and demonstrating the unprecedented destructive capacity of a single aircraft. In minutes, the mission validated years of innovation. One aircraft, one bomb, delivered a force that once required dozens of sorties and hundreds of men. Across the Pacific, military strategists watched the results with a mixture of awe and relief. Intelligence reports confirmed the scope of destruction and the operational efficiency achieved. The mission had proven that the discovery which tripled bombing power was no longer theoretical. It was operational, lethal, and decisive. Every adjustment made in Tinian, every calculation refined in the cockpit, every technical improvement to engines, airframe, and bomb sites had converged to redefine the art of aerial warfare. Yet, amid triumph, there was gravity. The scale of destruction forced even the most seasoned officers to confront the human cost of strategic innovation. This moment marked not just the apex of technological achievement, but the moral threshold of total warfare, the point at which human ingenuity and human suffering intersected in a stark, irreversible way. The success of Boxcar's mission set the stage for a broader understanding of air power's potential, signaling the dawn of an era where a single aircraft, expertly designed and crewed, could determine the outcome of battles and, ultimately, wars. In the hours following the release over Nagasaki, reports began filtering back to command centers across the Pacific. The effectiveness of the mission was undeniable. Industrial facilities that once required sustained bombing campaigns were now destroyed in a single sortie. For the first time, military planners could quantify what had previously been theoretical. The innovations integrated into the B-29, from engine optimization and weight distribution to bomb site precision, had multiplied destructive potential far beyond expectations. The discovery was no longer a laboratory triumph. It had been proven in combat. Elsewhere, reconnaissance aircraft confirmed the extent of damage. Factories lay in ruins, transportation networks severed, and emergency services overwhelmed. Military analysts calculated that a comparable campaign using previous bombing methods would have required weeks, dozens of aircraft, and hundreds of aircrew lives. The multiplication of power had been realized. Commanders recognized that this was not simply an evolution of air warfare, it was a revolution. The psychological impact on crews was immediate. Pilots and bombardiers, long accustomed to missions fraught with uncertainty, experienced a sense of controlled power. They now possessed a tool that could strike decisive blows with a fraction of the resources previously required. Confidence surged, but so did the recognition of responsibility. Letters and diary entries from the airmen reveal a mixture of pride and unease, reflecting the duality of mastery and destruction inherent in their new capability. The enemy's response underscored the transformation. Japanese defensive strategy, reliant on dispersion and anti-aircraft batteries, was rendered ineffective against the precision and scale of the strike. Reports from Japanese intelligence units described shock and disbelief. The Allies had achieved what was previously considered impossible. Commanders were forced into reactive measures, attempting to relocate production facilities and fortify cities, but the pace of innovation had outstripped their capacity to respond. One mission had shifted the strategic equilibrium, demonstrating that technological and tactical integration could redefine the very framework of warfare. This turning point was not solely about a single bomb or city. It highlighted the culmination of years of research, testing, and operational refinement. The discovery that had tripled bombing power was now validated in the harshest environment imaginable: real combat. The implications extended beyond immediate destruction. Command structures recalibrated, operational planning became more efficient, and the doctrine of strategic bombing evolved to prioritize precision and lethality. What had begun as an incremental innovation became a force multiplier with exponential consequences. Historians later noted that this mission exemplified the intersection of human skill, technological ingenuity, and leadership foresight. Every adjustment in aircraft design, every calculation in the bomb site, every decision made by commanders on the ground contributed to a decisive, singular moment. It demonstrated the capacity of strategic innovation to transform outcomes at the scale of nations. By the evening, as crews returned to Tinian, the enormity of their achievement settled in. The airfield, once a hub of anxious preparation and anticipation, now reflected quiet relief and solemn recognition. The B-29 fleet had proven its lethal potential. The Discovery's promise, tripling America's bombing power, had been realized. Across the Pacific, commanders, strategists, and airmen understood that the war had entered a new phase, one defined by precision, efficiency, and unparalleled destructive capability. Yet even in triumph, there was a lingering awareness of consequence. Cities lay in ruins, lives were lost, and humanity confronted the scale of mechanized destruction. The turning point was absolute, but it was also sobering. The technology that had multiplied power had simultaneously multiplied responsibility, marking the precipice of total warfare and the dawning realization that the human and moral dimensions of aerial supremacy could never be separated from its technical achievements. This moment of convergence, human, technological, tactical, and moral, naturally leads into the aftermath, where the consequences of the discovery and its operational application will unfold across the Pacific and beyond. The immediate aftermath of the Nagasaki mission reverberated across both military and civilian spheres. Reports from the airfield at Tinian detailed operational success. The bomb had detonated precisely on target, obliterating factories and transportation hubs critical to Japanese war production. Preliminary assessments estimated that the mission had destroyed the equivalent of weeks of conventional bombing, validating months of painstaking technological refinement. For the U.S. Army Air Forces, this was proof that the Discovery, subtle adjustments in aircraft and ordnance design, had fully realized its potential. The capacity to deliver unprecedented destructive power in a single mission had transformed strategic calculations. In Washington, military planners recalibrated their approach. Strategic bombing campaigns could now achieve maximum effect with fewer sorties, reducing aircraft attrition and crew casualties. The The tripling of bombing power allowed the United States to strike deeper into enemy territory, targeting industrial nodes previously considered inaccessible. Intelligence reports were updated to reflect the increased reach and lethality of American air forces, prompting Allied commanders to revise their operational priorities. Airborne logistics, supply chain planning, and crew training all adapted to the newfound capability, emphasizing precision and efficiency over volume. The psychological impact on both sides was profound. For Allied airmen, the ability to achieve results that once seemed impossible instilled confidence tempered by awareness of their destructive responsibility. Letters and memoirs reveal a mixture of pride and solemnity. Crews recognized that technological mastery could accomplish staggering feats, yet the human cost weighed heavily. Across the Pacific, Japanese command structures struggled to respond. Defensive positions were inadequate against the precise, high-impact strikes enabled by the new technology. Factories that had once operated under relative security were now vulnerable, forcing relocation of critical infrastructure and stretching already limited resources. Civilian populations faced devastation in urban centers, highlighting the stark reality of total war. Beyond the battlefield, the discovery influenced broader strategic thought. Military analysts recognized that incremental technological innovation, engine refinements, bomb site integration, and aircraft optimization could have disproportionate effects on operational outcomes. What had begun as a technical adjustment evolved into a strategic game-changer. The United States, leveraging both human ingenuity and mechanical precision, had redefined what air power could accomplish, setting new benchmarks for future campaigns. The success of the mission foreshadowed a new era in which a single, expertly equipped bomber could achieve results that once required entire fleets. The stage was set for the final operational assessments, where commanders, engineers, and strategists would evaluate the full scope of destruction and its long-term implications for the war's conclusion. In the weeks following the Nagasaki mission, the full scale of the operational impact became clear. Reports from intelligence and reconnaissance confirmed that critical industrial facilities had been destroyed, transportation networks severed, and supply chains disrupted. American strategists calculated that, with the improved B-29 capabilities, a single squadron could achieve the equivalent output of multiple bombing campaigns conducted with older aircraft. This validation of tripled bombing power reshaped operational doctrine. Fewer aircraft, fewer sorties, and reduced risk for crews could now accomplish what once demanded overwhelming force. Casualty assessments underscored the human cost. Thousands of civilians perished, and countless others were injured, highlighting the devastating consequences of high-precision, high-yield bombing. Allied planners, however, noted that the technological improvements had reduced overall aircrew losses compared to prior campaigns. For the first time, strategic bombing could be measured not only in destruction inflicted on the enemy, but also in lives preserved on the attacking side. This balance of efficiency and lethality became a defining feature of U.S. aerial operations for the remainder of the war. Enemy command structures struggled to respond. Japanese defensive measures, including anti-aircraft batteries and emergency dispersal of industry, proved largely ineffective against the precision of the upgraded bombing fleet. Operational delays and resource misallocation compounded the crisis, eroding the enemy's capacity for organized resistance. Strategically, the discovery forced Axis powers to re-evaluate priorities, often at the expense of frontline effectiveness. The psychological impact was as significant as the physical. The knowledge that American bombers could strike with unprecedented force instilled fear and uncertainty within leadership circles, accelerating decisions to fortify or abandon critical positions. On the Allied side, the discovery's consequences extended beyond immediate tactical gains. Training programs evolved to incorporate the new operational possibilities, emphasizing optimized flight paths, synchronized squadron coordination, and technical mastery of bomb deployment systems. Engineers continued to refine aircraft systems and ordnance designs, creating a feedback loop between innovation and operational success. Military doctrine increasingly embraced the principle that technological refinement could multiply strategic effect, reinforcing the importance of research, testing, and interdisciplinary collaboration. By late 1945, the combined outcomes of precision, payload, and operational efficiency confirmed a fundamental truth. The discovery that had tripled America's bombing power had not only shortened the war, but also permanently transformed air warfare. It demonstrated the interplay between human skill, technological ingenuity, and strategic foresight, proving that small, calculated innovations could reshape the trajectory of global conflict. The stage was now set for reflection. As historians and military analysts would assess the broader implications, ethical, technological, and human, of a single discovery capable of altering the course of history. The story of how one discovery tripled America's bombing power is more than a tale of technology or strategy. It is a testament to human ingenuity and its consequences. A series of small adjustments, imperceptible to the untrained eye, culminated in an operational capability that reshaped warfare. Engines tuned for efficiency, aircraft balanced to perfection, bomb sights synchronized with precision. All converged to create a force multiplier that changed the calculus of destruction. Yet, for all its technical brilliance, the discovery carried a profound moral weight. Cities were leveled, thousands of lives lost, and civilians confronted the realities of modern war in its most absolute form. Air crews, engineers, and commanders experienced the duality of pride and responsibility, aware that their skill and innovation could achieve decisive victories while exacting a human toll. This intersection of ingenuity and consequence underscores a central truth of conflict. The power to create can never be separated from the power to destroy. Strategically, the implications extended far beyond a single mission. The war, once protracted and uncertain, was accelerated. Enemies were forced into rapid adaptation or collapse, and military doctrine was forever altered. The discovery demonstrated that innovation, discipline, and foresight could multiply effectiveness in ways unimaginable a decade prior. Ultimately, the legacy of this breakthrough is both technical and human. It reminds us that progress carries responsibility, and that every leap in capability reshapes the battlefield, the minds of those who wield it, and the lives of those who face it. In the quiet aftermath, historians and strategists continue to reflect on the delicate balance between ingenuity and ethics, a lesson as relevant now as it was in 1945.